Warren Gatland.
Guess who's back?
Oh my God. The inevitable happened to Wayne Pivac. 34 matches, 13 wins, was never going to quite cut it. And what's worse for him is things were going in the wrong direction. So this year, 12 matches and just 3 wins. WRU Chief Executive Steve Phillips said today Gatland will take charge of the Six Nations, the World Cup, and added there is, quote, the ability to go through the next World Cup cycle up to and including Australia 2027, end quote. So this is not just a short-term measure necessarily. And I guess Gatland's 59 years of age. There is plenty of juice in the tank. What proposition does this make Wales in 2023?
I think that means, if I've done my maths right, I think he could have been, by the time we get to 2027, he could have been coach for 16 of the last 19 years, which is quite a remarkable body of work. What does it mean for Wales? It's very tight. I was over at the Heineken Champions Cup launch last week, and Handré Pollard was up, and all the English guys were very interested to talk to Handré Pollard about how quickly it took Rassie Erasmus to turn South Africa around during the last World Cup cycle with a view to Eddie Jones. And he said it's too tight. He said Erasmus had 2 years. He went home in 2017. He took over for the 2018 season and had a tour, an incoming tour. I think it was England were over there in 2018. He had a rugby championship. Then he had another one. He had another rugby championship before the World Cup. He had a November as well. I think he had 18 games. And I think one of the things Erasmus did, if you watch that Chasing the Sun documentary, was he had he started with this big 18, and we're going to have this big process to get there. Now, he had 18 to play with, so that was why 18 was the big number for him. But Pollard said it took us 10 to really get what he wanted to bring. So when think of Gatland, he has 5 actual games. Then he has, I'm not sure exactly how many Wales have in terms of warm-ups. It's either 3 or 4. And then you've got the World Cup opener. They're on their softer side of the draw, but they've had a very bad cycle. Their player group is definitely not as strong as it was when he was last in charge. He's relying on a couple of familiar faces in terms of Alan Wynne-Jones, George North, guys that he would have given, if not their debuts, he would have overseen the vast majority of the great parts of their career. He may even look at bringing someone like John Davis back, who's been kind of out of the frame, the player of the Lions series in 2017. But he's very much asking getting the band back together and trying to get a tune out of them one last time. And I don't know whether he's going to be able to bring in a couple of his old assistants, or is he working with Pivac's team? I think that's to be TBD. But Robin McBride is at Leinster, so I presume he won't be able to go and get him. Rob Howley is available, I suppose.
Sean Edwards in Paris.
Edwards is in Paris, and that's he may be available after the World Cup.
Gatland without Sean Edwards.
Well, yeah, it was a big part of what he did, and that team that he had behind him. I think Edwards had moved on by the time they got to the last World Cup, and he went on Lions tours without him, and he had a very, I think, he's an overseer. He sets the tone. He's not a Joe Schmidt. He's not on the pitch with the players. He's not devising game plans. He has other people to do that. And Stephen Jones, the former out half, is supposed to be a brilliant attack coach, and he was working under Pivac, and you would presume he's going to continue. And he would have played under Gatland at the start of Gatland's Wales term and the end of his own playing career. So there's a relationship there. It's just very tight, and it was never, it doesn't speak to good planning that you're ditching your coach this close to a World Cup, and it's maybe happening in England even by the time we go there. It may have happened in England, but it just speaks to how badly they've got things wrong and how badly things went for Pivac, who I feel sorry for because he's a decent man, but following Gatland was always going to be difficult, and the structural issues within Wales that we knew were there, Gatland was able to paper over those cracks for years and keep it all together and create this Team Wales down in the Vale of Glamorgan. And they're banking on him being able to do it again. And, it's a massive ask, but you would never underestimate what Warren Gatland can do. And even his Lions experience of being able to bring things together quickly and performing. I'd say he'll keep it simple. I'd say he'll pick a lot of familiar faces. He'll have a go at the Six Nations, but it'll be more about, right, let's just get a team together. But, it's like, the way things are going, he won't have many URC teams in the knockouts. He won't have any European teams in the knockouts. There's not a lot of rugby to be played, really, between now and the World Cup. If you're not playing in those games, you just wonder where he's going to get it from in terms of quality.
Yeah, true. He never oversaw the most complicated game plan. It was often said of Gatland, so that's a plus. And maybe the lack of Heineken Champions Cup involvement means we'll hear stories of Welsh camps left, right and centre over the coming months. And
which worked for Japan in 19.
Indeed. He is the great band-aid of Welsh rugby, isn't he?
It's incredible. And if you read Sam Warburton's piece in the London Times about 2 weeks ago after they lost to Georgia, maybe 3 weeks ago now, the structural issues that are there are stark, and we can see it on a weekly basis. Anyone who watches the URC, the paucity of performance from all 4 Welsh regions. I know they can come up with a one-off performance here or there, but really over the course of a season they're not at the races, and they blame budgets and they look at the Irish model and they don't like it, and there's all sorts of deep-seated reasons behind it in terms of club v regions, and people don't like the regions, but ultimately the player base is not as good as it was. They had a team at the FIFA World Cup this summer, or this month. That's difficult for them. They've got 2 teams competing at the high end of English football who are very popular. They're losing ground to the game of football, and even you hear them complaining about the match day experience in Cardiff and how real fans don't like going anymore. And you just wonder about the long term viability of the game, which was so synonymous with Wales. And Gatland has been able, just during his time there, to come in and just create this group of this squad. It's a club, and they can perform. And it really, nobody cared about what everything else that was happening, because the team were winning. The national team were getting to World Cup semi-finals. They were really unlucky not to go further in 11, and they came within seconds really of taking out South Africa in 19. So his achievements are unquestionable, and his ability is unquestionable, and he's underestimated in this country a little bit, with a bit of resentment going back to his time here and some of the stuff that transpired across the years. But you can't help but respect what he's done in the game and his ability to do it, and he's been so integral to, like, the fact that they've gone back to him just speaks to how important he is to particularly WRU, because when he's winning, nobody wants to shine a light at what they're doing.
And a paucity of ideas.
Yeah, and homegrown coaches. It was only a couple of years ago 2 of the 4 regions were coached by Irish coaches, which didn't sit well with the Welsh fans over there. There's no outstanding candidate within the regions because the regions haven't been successful. Pivac was the only one who's managed to get a tune out of any of them. But there was definitely a sense that was, his lifetime achievement, really. And he'd been around the block in between his success at Auckland in the early 2000s and being successful with the Scarlets in, 16 or 17. In between that, his body of work wasn't sensational. So you were wondering whether he could get a tune, whether he could take that on to Wales. And I suppose, are they going to go for Razor Robertson at this stage? He seems to be either going to England or New Zealand. Who else is there? Everyone's locked in. Going for someone now is tough. Gatland was available. It was, he suddenly appeared on our televisions or our streaming services with Amazon. He got a column in the Telegraph. He'd gone back to New Zealand with every intention of being the next All Blacks coach. I think once that ship had sailed, he realised there's not a huge amount of money to be made in New Zealand rugby if you're not involved in the All Blacks. He's been, the Chiefs coach before. Why not come back to Europe and live that life again? Because it's lucrative, it's challenging. As you say, he's not that old. I wonder, would he have preferred to try a new challenge? But then there must be some comfort in the familiarity of going into Wales and the great challenge. And he, the fact that he's loved there and he's admired there so much, everyone has an ego, that must play to that as well. And I don't think he'll study his legacy either. I think what he's achieved there in the fullness of time will be appreciated, even if this doesn't work out. I mean, this is a bit of a shot to nothing.
Yeah.